Hi everybody, welcome to the Saturday Livestream for the Practical Woodsman. I'm Rut, the creator and host of the Practical Woodsman. That's right, my ingenious, which has brought this all into existence. Scientists and philosophers, take my word for it, scientists and philosophers everywhere. I can't rattle off their names or anything like that, but there are scientists and philosophers everywhere studying my noggin, try to figure out how it works and harness its powers. Welcome to the Saturday live stream for the Practical Woodsman. It's storming outside, hotter than you know what. And so today, in the Saturday live stream, I've got my fans on, got my air conditioning spitting out cold air, and I'm a little, I've imbibed a little bit. So if I seem unusually jolly, blame it on the booze. I had some company, and so I offered some to my company, and I said, it's pretty early. He says, but it's Saturday. And I said, he's right. He's right. Why can't I drink a fifth of whiskey before noon on a Saturday? It's Saturday. So here we are, a little imbibed, and I've got some interesting things to talk about. Y'all let me know if you can hear me and see me. You folks on YouTube, on Locals, on Rumble, can you see me and hear me all right? Give you guys time to hit me up in the chat. What would you do if you were out in the backcountry on a day like today? Depending on where you're at, I guarantee it's likely very, very hot. Ron Phillips is here. G. Huns is here. They can see me and hear me. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, G. Huns. So good to have you guys joining me. I do have some interesting things to talk about. Two things in particular that I wanted to highlight in this week's Saturday live stream, and that's Hatchets. I want to show you off my favorite hatchet and the reason why it's my favorite. And I want to talk about journaling. How many of you, when you go out on these excursions, do you journal? Anybody do that? I have experience doing that. When I really started out going into these woods that I was not familiar with and heading off deep, days long, into the backcountry on foot, what I used to do is I used to take a journal with me. This is not the journal, but it was something like this. Much smaller, but a nice leather pictures, G. Hun says. That kind of takes the place of a journal in a lot of ways nowadays, don't it? Never journaled, though, have you, G. Huns? I'll tell you the things that I would include in my journal. First of all, I'm traveling like between 6 to 15 miles, let's say, through mountain wilderness all day long, putting in this hard work. Then you get into camp, you got to get your camp going and all that stuff, get your shelter set up and all that stuff. Well, if anybody goes with me, they usually end up going to bed a lot earlier than I do, because my favorite time out in the woods is at night, around the campfire, around the camp. And so I usually hit the sack pretty late. Not quite literate enough, G. Hun says. Oh, it don't have to be eloquent. Definitely doesn't have to be eloquent. Let me tell you some of the things that I would include in my journal when I would get into camp after a long day's hike in the woods. I would describe the trail. I would talk about any difficulties I encountered. I would describe my trail mate, like what's he dealing with, what sorts of things is he going through. I would describe the terrain, the weather, those sorts of things. I'd try to capture the experience for myself, so that then, 50 years later, when I'm too old to do this anymore, and, I'm missing all my teeth, I've had 2 hip replacements, and I'm sitting in the nursing home thinking about all of my Indiana Jones adventures from the past, I'd be able to get out my journal and relive those moments. Now, I will say that I've stopped carrying something like this altogether anymore. Now, I do everything on my phone. So my phone which I can't find it right now. My phone becomes my journal. It becomes my camera. It becomes my voice recorder. It becomes everything. How many of you use the just the voice recording on your phone when you're out in the woods? You ever do that? I'll tell you the situations where I've done that. When I've gone out with a beloved friend, and I love this friend to death. He's like a brother to me. If he's snoring in the middle of the night, sometimes I'll get my phone out, I'll turn on the recorder and capture his snoring. It's not to make fun of him or anything or to use as blackmail or anything like that. Again, the thought is one of these days I'm going to be 100 years old, alone in a nursing home, and I want to be able to relive these moments. I want to be able to go back and hear what my friend's snoring sounds like. So I do that. And sometimes just to catch the sounds around camp. It's a lot more easy to turn on just your voice recorder on your phone and capture the conversations and stuff around camp without anybody knowing that they're being recorded. And I'll tell you, I don't mean that in like a nefarious way. What I'm talking about is as soon as I set up my camera and my friends know that they're being recorded out in the woods around camp, they act differently. They act differently and they talk differently. And that's not what I want to capture. I don't want to be, 100 years from now revisiting these precious memories with friends and stuff out in the wilderness. I don't want an artificial presentation. I want the good stuff. The stuff that happens when you're all alone 50 miles out in the backcountry and nobody is around to judge you or anything like that. And when people get relaxed and they start talking, your beloved friends, the way they naturally talk, the way they naturally laugh, the stories they naturally tell, those are the things I like to capture. So if I set up a camera and I try to capture that on video, it changes everything. People get camera shy and they act different. They talk different in very subtle ways. But I know I'm not getting the authentic them. So a workaround for that is your audio recorder. When you're around camp, wait till people get relaxed and start getting intoxicated and stuff. Start telling their stories, and they just forget everything except for just the moment. You get your phone out and you just click record and you set your phone down and you just let the audio record it all. Now, a lot of yous, they're on YouTube, Locals, and Rumble, probably grew up kind of in the era that I did, and you might remember your dads having these little tape recorders and getting you when you were a kid and sitting you down saying, hey, and they would do like little interviews with us. You remember that when we were kids? Hey, so how old are you now? I'm 5. What's your favorite color? My favorite color is green. And so then they get these out like 30 years later and they play these recordings. It's kind of great. It's kind of great that it's not all on video because your imagination has to fill in a lot of it. And you hear your own voice from like 30 years ago. My favorite color is blue. And there's some magic to it. So that's one thing. Journaling in any form, whether it's you sitting up with your lantern light and jotting down, the experience, the trail conditions, the things that you encountered, the frustrations, the challenges, stuff like that. Or if it's on your phone, a lot of times I do that on my phone in my shelter after everybody's in bed or next to the fire. I type in my notes app everything that was going on. But also I use my audio recording quite a lot when I don't want to spoil the naturalness of the environment, of the people who are there. It's really interesting that people become different when paired with other people. And to illustrate it, I'm an artist. I grew up for the first 35 years of my life. I thought I was going to be a famous newspaper cartoonist. And then the internet come along and it destroyed newspapers. So the newspaper cartoonist career kind of went the way of the dodo at just the time that I was becoming of age to get into that market. But In art, when you're combining colors, a collar has a certain quality to it until you pair it with another collar. And sometimes that other collar will completely change your perception of the original collar. You know, if you've seen the new logo for the Practical Woodsman, the collars I've chosen are like this very lively blue and this very spring collarish green. I really like that combination of collars, the way they play off each other. So I thought, well, that's what I want for the logo. People will see those two collars together and they will associate it with the Practical Woodsman for the rest of their lives. And that's kind of what I had in mind. So when you see the new logo, the PW, the raccoon, and you see the collars blue and green together like that, that's very purposeful. But the whole point of me bringing that up is that just like collars, like you can take the color blue and, well, let's take like the color yellow. All right, you take the color yellow and you pair that with the color brown. Well, yellow on its own has a certain feel to it, right? And then you pair it with brown and it becomes earthy. But if you take away the brown and now you pair the yellow with blue, or you pair the yellow with red, well, it has an entirely different feel to it. That's the way people are. Have you ever noticed that about yourself? You feel you view yourself a certain way and you feel a certain way and you act and talk a certain way when you're by yourself. Now you put you with somebody else who has their own personality and everything, and you become different. Have you ever noticed that? Depending on the person that I put you with, you will become different. And it's like the influence of two different colors. Whatever this person brings and that effect on you and your effect on that person, it creates this brand new thing. And so when you're out in the backcountry with beloved friends, it creates a soup or a stew that is very hard to capture. It's impossible to capture if they know that they're being observed. It's the weirdest thing. So to capture the real essence of it, you have to record it without anybody knowing. And the problem of it is that when you start that, you know that you're recording them. And so the only person who ends up being artificial to a certain extent when you're doing this is you, because you know the recording's going on. I'll speak personally. I know the recording's going on. So I'm trying to act natural, but I know that I'm not being completely natural. So anyway, there's a big old long spiel about journaling, about capturing the magic around camp. Tell you what, I've been putting off having a lot of booze lately, but this is awfully nice. All right, what do you guys want to talk about? What do you want to talk about? G-Huns, I don't think you give yourself enough credit, buddy. You're a good man. G-Huns, if you don't mind me singing your praise, G-Huns, I did a little live stream or something about radios, about like ham radios. And, I'm proud of myself for researching it, figuring it out finally, figuring some things out about this ham radio. But I do a live stream about it, I start talking about it, and then G-Huns starts contributing to the conversation, and I realize there is so much I don't know that G-Huns does know. So, I realize this is an outdoor woodsman channel. I don't want to get into all this philosophy and everything with y'all. But I will say this. that whatever your weekend, um, there's no reason to feel bad about that because somebody else obviously is strong in the things that you're weak in. But you have to remind yourself that what you're strong in, lots of people are weak in. So um, don't ever think down about yourself. You're and in hand with that. Um, I got a very nice couple of comments on this latest video that I put up for Practical Woodsman this week. One of the comments was, "You're obviously very uncomfortable receiving compliments." Somebody wrote to me, said, "You're obviously very uncomfortable receiving compliments." This is Evan Williams, the white label, 100 proof Evan Williams. I like it. I think it's the best deal on the shelves. So he says that, you're uncomfortable getting compliments. I'm not uncomfortable getting compliments, and I want to tell you, I don't want to discourage anybody from giving me compliments. I love the compliments. His compliment was something like, "You're an excellent content creator." Thank you. That means a lot to me because months go by where nobody says that, and sometimes I wonder, like, is anybody appreciating what I'm doing here? So when I do get those compliments, it means a whole lot to me. I do value that sort of compliment very, very much. At the same time, I want you to know that I don't view myself as better than anybody. There's a lot of arrogance and stuff on the internet, and I don't want to contribute to that. Of course, we've got the opener where I say, "Was it you, Mad Ghost?" Well, I appreciate it. There's a lot of arrogance on the internet. And I know that I open up the show with, it's my genius, which has brought this all into existence, and scientists and philosophers. And that's all for fun. I don't really think of myself like that. It's tongue in cheek. It's like, of course, scientists and philosophers have no interest in me whatsoever, but it's funny to imagine that they would. So I'm just a regular guy with I think, in today's age, a pretty unique upbringing in the Appalachian woods, and I want to share that stuff, but I'm not smarter than anybody, and I don't think I'm better than anybody for sure. I tell you, I got so many flaws and shortcomings that if you all got to know me in person, you probably would say, "I don't even want to spend time with this guy because he's got so many flaws." But I try to be positive about the whole thing, So I understand that there are some things that I really do know very, very well, and I want to share those things. I also want to let you all see the side of me that doesn't know things, so that you can see that there is no better or worse, that we're all at different stages, learning things, trying different things, and all those sorts of things. So thank you for understanding that. Now, let's talk about hatchets. This is a Gerber hatchet. It's got some life. You can tell it's had a history, hasn't it? This thing is, I bought this back in 2008. So it's 17 years old, this thing. True story, when I bought this hatchet, I was hesitant to buy it because I didn't like the idea of plastic. I said, I don't want to buy any kind of plastic hatchet because as soon as it gets cold, that handle's going to break. You see, it's even hollow. That's a hollow plastic handle or a composite handle. It's got spider webs in there. Not very polished here. So it's got a hollow handle there. 17 years ago when I bought this from Gerber, I said, that'll last a year. It'll last a year. And I was so hesitant because I thought if that handle breaks out in the field, there's no fixing that. It's not like a regular hatchet. If this handle breaks out in the field, well, then I can cut a piece of wood and fashion my own handle right out in the field. Ron says, my compliment is we choose to spend time with you. I know, and I really appreciate that. I really do appreciate that. I don't take it for granted. I understand. I'm not doing the most interesting things on the internet. They're pretty tame and, down to earth. And most people really like seeing the flashy stuff. So, even though I'm not doing flashy stuff, it matches the channel, The Practical Woodsman. My whole idea is, I did a video, so I put in like 4 or 5, at least 5 hours of work for the latest video. Put it up on Practical Woodsman, and it's only got like 70 views. 70. There's 8 billion people in the world, and only 70 people have spent time with my latest video. That required like at least 5 hours of effort, like straight on effort and work. My brain says, why would I go and do like some dangerous, really fantastical video that takes like 20 hours of effort and time and attention if it's only going to get 100 viewers? See, it's a cost-benefit methodology that I use. And so my thinking is do the easier videos. Once those start picking up with engagement, then I might be more inclined. Jihan says 7 billion plus dumb butts. Well, I fall into that category. That's the thing. Anytime I call somebody else a dummy, I have to realize it's a dummy calling somebody a dummy, because I'm not any better than anybody else. But you see what I'm saying? If an easy video takes like 5, 6, 7, sometimes 8 hours of recording, editing, sound, added pictures and stuff like that, and it only gets 70 views, well, that's a pretty good cost to benefit ratio. So I don't want to spend 50 hours on a video and only have it have 100 views. But the more people who discover the channel and everything, and the more viewers I get, the more I'll be willing to put in more effort and stuff. Mad Ghost says that the other clods on the internet don't know what's good to watch. Well, it's just a personal preference. I went and saw the new Superman movie on Thursday night, and then I go on the internet and I see the people arguing about which one's better, the 1978 Christopher Reeve Superman, the 2013 Superman, or the newest Superman. Folks, it's all personal opinion. There is no best. There is no best. It's what do you prefer? That's all there is. And so that's the way I feel about. I think a lot of people just haven't discovered me yet. But I know that there are a lot of people out there that would enjoy this sort of thing. Back to the Hatchets. 17 years old. I thought that thing would break the first year. And here it is 17 years later. It's been through all sorts of abuse. Check out that blade. The blade's got some nicks in it and stuff. But as far as weight goes, you can't beat this hatchet. Now, I will say that the drawback to it is you can't really use it as a hammer. See the way that the back is styled? And this isn't like just stainless steel. This is some kind of composite. But it cuts very well. It's very light. It's top heavy. I like that on a hatchet. I don't like the overkill with the hatchets. You see how small that is? Now, I'll tell you that most of the hatchets you'll get, and this is an Italian hatchet, and I'll be happy to include a link down in the description once we finish this live stream. But this is an Italian hatchet with a leather sheath. It's very beautiful and everything, and I love it. I love this hatchet. Beautiful wooden handle. It's just overkill. it's overkill for what you're really going to use out in the woods. I saw Les Stroud one time say that he would not go into the woods in Alaska without a full hatchet, without a full axe. So if you're interested in a good axe, a lightweight axe for wintertime work, I would never, I don't think I'd ever carry this out into the woods. Saws are superior to hatchets. These saws are superior to hatchets. If you're building a shelter, if you're making firewood, anything like that, these beat this any day of the week, in my opinion. In my opinion. So Les Stroud talking about he won't go anywhere without this. I think that's bravado. I think it's bravado. It sounds good. It sounds heroic and brave and smart and everything. Very woodsy. But that's a lot of. This is even a hatchet, or not a hatchet. This is an axe for like a backpacker. So if you're in, what I wanted to tell you is, if you're interested in a good hatchet, go to your local hardware store and see if you can't find a Trooper. It's got an American hickory handle. You see the head on that is not, it's not a brick, so it's not super heavy. And I just use this for my firewood here around the house to split firewood. But if I were going to take an axe into the backcountry, it would be this one, because it's not, it doesn't have any overkill to it. Now, I want to tell you guys over there on locals, we're at 26 minutes, 27 minutes. So in 3 minutes, it's going to shut off on locals. I'll try not to go too far, much over 30 minutes. But if you're on locals and you want to see the rest of it, jump onto YouTube or Rumble, where we're streaming there too. All right. So anyway, an axe is overkill. I think this beats an axe or a hatchet any day of the week, these saws. This hatchet here, which is an Italian hatchet, you see it's even got the imprint there. And I'll include a link for this. Fox Knives, they sent this to me to try out, and I love it. It is beautiful. But notice the head on that. Here's what I want you to focus on. You see the head of this hatchet. You don't need that much steel for anything you're going to be doing in the backcountry. You'll never need that much steel. You know, I growed up heating with firewood. We used hatchets and splitting tools and axes and stuff like that, double-headed axes, single axes. And when you want a lot of steel, that's like an heirloom thing. I mean, that's going to be a lifetime tool that you're going to be using around your house. But when we're talking about going into the backcountry on foot, you're never going to need that much steel, which means you're carrying around weight and a capacity that you're just never going to need. So let me show you this other hatchet. It's my favorite. I've got two of them. It's this one here. Now I want you to look at this. This is by JXO, and I will include the links to these things if you could. This is sold out right now, and I'll tell you an interesting story about this. They sent this to me to try out and to review, like, I'm going to say 3 years ago. When I got this, it's kind of a cross between a hatchet and a tomahawk. And when they sent this to me, I said, that is perfect. That is perfect. I want you to compare these two. Remember what we're talking about. We're talking about how much steel is going into that thing. How much steel are you going to be hauling on foot out into the woods, and how much steel do you really need? Well, this it's just overkill. It's a beautiful hatchet. It's overkill. This hatchet tomahawk right here is just perfect. That's all the steel you're going to ever need for any project out in the woods in real life. There is no reason to carry anything big more than that as far as steel goes. And so you see, it's very slender. There's not a ton of steel to that. They cut out right here, unnecessary steel you're never going to use. And so you get the hatchet edge in a tomahawk kind of style hatchet, and it's just perfect. Another thing is, if that handle ever breaks out, you can change it out right out in the field. It is a beautiful hatchet. Now here's the real life story I was going to tell you about this. They sent this to me about 3 years ago, and I've been using it for about 3 years. The other day, I started thinking, man, they send me hatchets all the time. This is the newest one they sent me. But I was thinking, they send me hatchets all the time, and not a single one of them has ever come close to being as perfect as this one that they sent me about 3 years ago. So I thought, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. I'm going to go on the internet and see if they're still making these. I went on to Amazon, looked up this tomahawk hatchet. There was 1 left, and it was used. Caden likes this. Yeah, this is an awesome hatchet. And I'm not trying to sell you guys anything. I swear. I don't work for these guys. But I know how hard it is to come across really good recommendations sometimes. And when you go to these other, what they call them, influencers, they're selling whatever people are sending them. Like whoever sends them something, they're going to say that that's awesome. I don't do that. And I've been using this thing for 3 years before I will never find another hatchet this great. So I went on to Amazon, went to them, and I just checked it today before I started this live stream. They're still sold out. I'll show it to you. See how it's currently unavailable? They don't know when it's going to come back in stock. Hi, DY Adventures. Thanks for lurking. You're welcome to do that. All right. Currently unavailable. It's currently unavailable because I got the very last one, and it was used. Here it is. Even comes with a different leather sheath there. You see a different leather sheath style. But it's the same hatchet. Oh, this is the new one. It's the same hatchet. Same size, same amount of steel, very slender steel there. What I was going to tell you is that the back works perfectly as a hammer for like your steaks and stuff. Jock says, are you concerned about axe shape, sharpness, and safety? Not with this on. I don't, I rarely use this. Yeah, I use this for making like a cook tripod. I'll use this for protection. If I got some yotes come into my camp or come near my camp in the middle of the night, I'll reach over and grab this just for protection. I use it as a hammer, so for the stakes of my shelter. These come with a sharpening stone. So if you guys end up ordering one of these, oh good. Jihan says that locals cut out. I knew it was going to do that. Sorry about that. So anyway, if you order one of these, they come with a sharpening stone. Let me see if I can get that real quick. Hang on. Here's the one that come with it. And so you've got a rough side, which is the blue, and then you've got a smoother side, which is the white. So you can carry that out into the field with you if you want. I think it makes more sense to leave it at home. Just work with it as you can while you're out in the field, and then when you get home, do your sharpening and stuff like that. And my grandpa taught me years ago, you can go down to any riverbank. You can go down to the bank of any creek or anything like that, pull stones out of the creek. They will work the same way as this if you find the right stones. And the way you do it, the way you sharpen your hatchet, a lot of you already know how to do this. But you don't need like a fancy stone like the puck. Yeah, Caden says. I have a brand new one here because I just ordered this. There we go. This is what it looks like brand new. But it's just a rock, really. I mean, and my grandpa never used these. My papaw never used these. He would just go down into a creek and pull a couple of different types of rocks out of the creek, and he would sharpen it. He was my grandpa had his own sawmill. That's what my grandpappy did. He had his own sawmill at his house, so he knew a lot about sharpening knives and hatchets and blades and stuff like that. And he would just do it out of the creek. So you don't need these specialized things. You don't need to spend money on these, but they come free with the hatchet is what I'm saying. And the way you use it is you take this is the way I do it. You take the rougher side and you roll it like that, right along the edge. After you do that for about an hour, you switch over to the smoother side, and now you smooth it down. And you do that for about 30 minutes. And just keep checking that blade until you get the sharpness that you're after. But you can do that with river stones. You don't need these specialized stones. So that hatchet, let me tell you what I paid for it. If I can give you an idea of how much money I put into that. Well, don't tell me. Don't tell me how much I paid for it. But I think it was like $40 or something like that. I tell you, that's just a JXE JXO on Amazon. That is handmade, and that's my favorite hatchet. I take that with me. It doesn't take up any more weight than it needs to, which you can't say about almost any other hatchet that you get on the market. That they're all overkill. They're all overkill. You're never going to need a hatchet that outlives you for taking out into the woods. I mean, because it's like dedicated boots. You know, I have boots that are dedicated to simply when I go. It's like Indiana Jones when he goes out into the jungle. He gets his hat, he gets his jacket, he gets his boots, the same pants, everything. That's the way a lot of my gear works. Is I'm not wearing my woods boots or my wilderness boots just day to day. They sit untouched until I'm ready to go out into the backcountry, and then I put them on. And so because I do it that way, those boots last a lot. They last years. DY Adventures just found it for $40. Where did you find it, DY? Where'd you find that at? On Amazon? Let's see what he's on YouTube. Let's see what he has to say. And let me go get a little top off my little hoochie cooch. Boy. I have to cover the label so they don't think I'm endorsing them. If they want an endorsement, they're going to have to get me a new hat or something, or a new hatchet. See where DI says he found that hatchet. And I'll tell you, over the past 3 years, they've sent me, different people have sent me probably a dozen hatchets. And there are all more or less like this. Overkill. Overkill. For somebody on foot, you do not need a, a mountain of steel. Just enough steel to make a tomahawk hatchet will do all the work around camp that you could ever hope for. Look at that. I love that hatchet. I don't feel like on the camera I can really illustrate just how there's not a lot of steel there. It's just enough steel. And so it's very lightweight. It's got a beautiful ergonomic design to it, so you get the most out of your swing. I love this hatchet. Still waiting for DY Adventures to tell us where he found that hatchet. Because I went looking for it on Amazon. But I didn't go really looking for it. I just went into like my past orders and it come up. Maybe it's being sold by somebody else. Same design and everything. What I will tell you about these Gerber hatchets, 17 years. I could still take that out and work it just as well. And it's an equivalent of this. They're both about the same weight. This is just slightly lighter, but I like this so much better. I think this is beautiful. Whereas I just kind of tolerate this one. Yeah, and the real drawback to this hatchet, this Gerber hatchet, you can't use it like a hammer. It's not designed like that. And so I think that's a real drawback. Looks like a Viking hatchet, G Hun says. Which one are you talking about? You talking about this? Are you talking about the JXE, JXO hatchet? Is that the one you say looks like a Viking hatchet? You can see it's just smaller in every way, but it's better in every way too. I don't mind. I bought the second one so that I could put it in my bug out bag. Jihan says, had his Gerber since 2006. I tell you, they hold up, don't they? They hold up. I think I got mine in 2008, so just a couple years after yours. And I remember thinking, this plastic is going to get brittle. As it ages, it's going to get brittle, or the more I use it, it's going to get brittle, and it's going to break. And it never has. It's a hollow plastic handle. I'm not saying it won't ever break. I'm just saying I'm really surprised with the life of that. DY Adventure says it's not letting him link on YouTube. Says that YouTube's not letting him link the JXE, JXO Tomahawk hatchet. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll do a little look around. DY, if you want to, like in the comments, if you come across the link, you might be able to do the link in the comments rather than in the chat. See if you can't do that. Oh, he went right to JXE, JXO website. I tell you, I love what they're doing, and I'm sure I don't know about them. What I mean is I don't know in depth about them. I don't know if they're just some like knockoff Chinese company or what, but I'll tell you that I'm real happy with some of the things they're doing over there. They sent me a knife. They've sent me several things, and every time I get something from them, I'm impressed by it. Okay, he's saying JXE, JXO.com. JXE, JXO.com. Let's see if I can pull that up real quick. Those of you who are on our locals group know that AmericanHatmakers.com reached out to me. AmericanHatmakers.com. If you are interested in outdoor hats, fedoras, safari hats, those sorts of things. They reached out to me, and they're sending me this hat right here to review. And I'm really excited about that. I don't do these team ups with these companies. Because I don't like being obligated to anybody. But they reached out to me by an email. If you go onto our locals group, thepracticalwoodsman.locals.com, or by downloading the locals.com app and then just searching for the Practical Woodsman, you'll be able to join our group. And I included the email correspondence that I have with them. They make really nice hats. And so I'm really excited about teaming up with them to do this review for this hat. They're sending it to me for free. I'm really excited about that. And I'll tell you the same thing I told them. I started buying fedoras and fine hats and like fine outdoor hats, brimmed hats, back in the late 90s. And back then, the internet was really just taking off. And I would go online, and I wasn't making a fortune back in. Gian says if they put the PW logo on it, they've sold me. Yeah, maybe like an Indiana Jones pin on the side, just the PW pin. Anyway, back in the late 90s, to buy a fedora, I really had to search the internet to find people still in the fine hat making business. Caden says, yep, that's why I pulled the trigger. That and all my axes are too heavy. So I ended up buying a couple of the fedoras that I have, are from the late 90s. I spent $150, $170, $250 on some of these hats. And half of them had to come from England because that was the only place I could find these fine hats being made. Well, when AmericanHatmakers.com reached out to me, I was giddy because I remember thinking back in the late 90s, these hats and the artistry that goes into these hats, it's going the way of the dodo. In another 20 years, these hats won't exist. And so the fact that they're not only existing, but that they're thriving and that people are discovering them brand new all over again, really exciting for me. So when AmericanHatmakers.com reached out to me, I was so excited. I told them, I think this is a match made in heaven. They said, well, I think so too. They said, we think you're just the guy. So I'm really looking forward to getting this hat, talking about them. If it's trash, I'll tell you it's trash. But if they're good hats at a good cost, I'll tell you that too. I'm just giving you a heads up that I'm excited about getting that hat and being able to review it and stuff. The way it comes, it's got a 3.5, I think it's 3.5 or 3 3/4 brim, and it's flat. So if you just think of Tombstone, you ever see Tombstone? It's kind of like a Tombstone hat. But when I was looking at it, I was thinking I can make some modifications to this hat and really make it mine. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing. It doesn't come with any kind of leather strapping or anything. So I'm thinking about putting in my own strapping. I'm thinking about dropping the front down, more like an Indiana Jones style drop, and leaving this flat. But I'm excited. I'm looking forward to getting this hat from them and then really making it my own and then showing it off and kind of singing the praises of American Hat Makers, because from what I see, they're a great company. Of course, I don't work for them. I work for me. But if I come across something nice, I don't mind talking about it. All right, guys. We had a great turnout today, a really great turnout, and I hope that this continues. I was out of town last week. I was way up north. I was in Toledo, Ohio. A late friend of mine, his mother lives in Toledo, Ohio. And I like to get up there and spend time with her. And I like to see a Mud Hens baseball game while I'm up there. And I like to go to Tony Pacco's and Anybody up there from up north? Yeah, anybody on YouTube or Rumble or locals? Any of you folks from up north? I was up in the neck of your woods. Caden's got the right idea. Yeah, those hats. And I'll tell you, they would only allow me to pick out one hat. And they had this straw hat. Let me see if I got a picture of it. I really wanted that straw hat, and the biggest torture for me was just trying to pick one hat. But they had this one. Let's see if I can pull it up here. They had a straw hat anyway, and it ran for about $77 market price. $77 for this beautiful straw hat. You know, going through the pictures there, I'm like, man, that is a beautiful hat. And if I tell them that's the one I want, then I'll get like an entire summer's worth of use out of that hat. And then I saw this hat, and I thought, oh, but long term, this is the hat I'm most interested in. So this is the one I told him I wanted, and a kind of a distressed wool felt, and I'm really looking forward to getting it and showing her off. So anyway, that's what I was doing last weekend. I had kind of obligations out of town, but I'm back home, looking forward to doing some live streams, getting some cool live streams this summer, and I'm looking at September or October as a possible big outing into the real backcountry on foot for a week or more into the deep, deep woods, and I'm looking forward to shooting all sorts of video and showing off all sorts of practical things for the woods. I told you I had company here earlier, and that's why I'm hitting the sauce so early. But we were talking, and he was like, oh man, you see some of these, he come out to my studio here, he saw some of the stuff, he says, what do you do? I said, well, I do this channel about the outdoors and, woodsman's things. He's like, oh, you ever see these videos? These guys cooking out in the middle of the wilderness, cooking steaks like on cast iron skillets, and they got the eggs and they've got all the spices, and it's just so rugged and beautiful. Anybody, you guys who know me, can you imagine me sitting there listening to him talk to me like this? And I was like, yeah, it is beautiful. It is beautiful. I said, I want you to think about something, though. He was talking about shelters. So they build these really elaborate shelters, like they chop down all these trees and they make these big elaborate shelters, and people can survive in them. And it's taken everything I can muster not to like leap across the table and strangle him. I said, I want you to think about something. Let's say that you go into your backyard. You're going to build like a little shelter for like your lawnmower or something. How many calories do you think you'd burn just like on a weekend project, doing a little tiny shelter for like just a little kind of, Caden says those channels are frauds. I know, but I can't just come out and say you're an idiot because those things are totally fake. But so I had to reason him through it. How many calories do you think that'd take? He said, well, it'd take a lot of calories. I'd say, yeah. I'd say, in fact, if you started on a Saturday morning, I'd think that by noon, you'd be running inside your house to refuel. Caden's got it exactly right. Where are all those calories going to come from? So he's got to run in. Now, when I start walking him through it, he starts to see it. Oh, wait a second. So here's a saying that I want you guys to remember. And I come up with this in the shower the other day. All y'all watching, so that y'all don't think I'm just a big jerk. Just remember this phrase. You can either be in real wilderness, or you can be cooking for real. But you can't do both at the same time. Both things cannot be true at the same time. You can't be in the true wilderness and also be cooking for real at the same time. Either you're in the real wilderness and you're getting by with just some crude cooking methods, or you're creating this beautiful meal and you're not really in the wilderness. The two things cannot coexist. You can't be cooking a beautiful meal and also be in the true wilderness. It cannot coexist. And the same thing goes for these shelters. When I started walking him through that, he realized these people are not in the wilderness. They're over the hill from their house in the woods, because it's the only way that any of that makes sense. Because we're talking about calories. And if you're creating an elaborate shelter that requires a lot of effort and work, calories have to fuel that, which means the person is stopping the video, going up the hill to their house, using the bathroom, taking a shower, drinking all the water they want, having the biggest meal they could desire, and then coming back down the hill into the woods, starting the video camera again, building this wilderness shelter. And then I said, now let me ask you this. You're in a plane crash out in the middle of Alaska or something. You don't have any food. What's the primary thing on your mind? He's like, getting to help. DY Adventure, I think we talked about this here. We talk about this in about every other episode of Practical Woodsman. And I know it's turned into a cartoon. It's like, if you want to do like an impression of Rut, the Practical Woods guy, you just start complaining about this stuff. Everybody will know who you're talking about. So I realize I'm turning into a caricature of myself. That's okay. If you're in a plane crash, your calories can either be devoted to hiking, or they can be devoted to creating a big elaborate shelter. They can't be dedicated to both things because you don't have any food to replace the calories. So I think in most cases, I think most of you and me, of course, if I need shelter, I'm just going to crawl under a log and make do. Or I'm going to find a rock overcrop to climb under and just make do. And that's the reality of the thing. Not building these elaborate fake shelters. Caden says that video you made about that is my all-time favorite. It's a pet peeve, I tell you. And I hope people get a kick out of seeing my frustration. I'll tell you the frustration. I've been doing Practical Woodsman now for, I think this is the 3rd year. So we're young. We're still a very young channel. But when I go onto YouTube or I go onto TikTok, do you think the algorithms don't throw those things right in my face? Yes, because they see that I'm the Practical Woodsman. They're like, oh, he must love these fake cooking videos and these fake shelter videos. And so I get bombarded by these things, and they just piss the hell out of me. I'm sitting watching this and I look at how many people have liked that video or watched that video. It's like in the millions. It's in the millions. And here I am doing real stuff, and it gets like 60 views. And so it is frustrating for me, but it's comical at the same time. Jack says I need to add a cast. I need to add a cast iron skillet to my logo. That's funny. Okay, final story, and then we'll call it a day. Final story. I had been going into the wilderness with my buddy Jeffrey, who you hear me talk about from time to time. He's a city boy. He's a Yankee. Now, he's from Kentucky. He's from just 20 minutes from me, even further south. But he does not want to be identified as a redneck. So he's all into like academia. And he's a teacher. He's in academia. He does not want to be identified as as Appalachian. He doesn't want to be identified as a hillbilly. He doesn't want to be identified as any of those things. And I understand it. In his field, people are judgmental. I just saw in the news there was this guy on an airplane. He's talking to this lady. He's like, there ain't no need for you to be behaving like that. She said, why am I sitting here talking to some retard who doesn't even know how to use the English language? Well, to my delight, lots of other people on the airplane jumped to his defense, and they're like, hey, why are you talking to him like that? Well, it turned out she's in academia, and he's a hillbilly. And she says, well, he's so stupid, he doesn't even know that ain't is poor English. And everybody on the plane's like, hey, we say ain't, and I have a master's degree. I've got a doctorate. I say ain't. So a lot of people jumped to his defense. I appreciated that. But anyway, my friend Jeffrey, he does not like to be identified for what he is. And I keep telling him, man, just embrace it. Just embrace your cultural heritage. No, he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to be identified as any of those things. So I don't even remember where the story's going, where I was going at with this story. But that's his whole thing, is that he wants to be accepted by the academic elites, and so he tries to talk straight and everything. And thing is, when he gets together with me, man, that accent gets so heavy, and he starts saying things like ain't and grode, and I just kind of bite my tongue and laugh about it. So he and I, 10 years ago, went out into the backcountry, and I decided I'm going to try to cook a whole breakfast out in the backcountry. I think this is about the time that I realized you can either cook for real or you can be in the woods for real, not both at the same time. And I had taken pancake mix, and I'd taken all this stuff, and I tried to cook it over the fire, and it was a disaster. A disaster. And I wasn't even carrying a cast iron skillet for that trip. I was carrying a stainless steel skillet that I got from Walmart with a foldable handle. I ended up abandoning that thing. It was such a disaster. It required so much work on top of work, on top of work, on top of work. So there's another thing. If you're out in the woods for real, like I'm talking about truly alienated from the modern world, there's so... DUI Adventures says he just embraces it. DUI stands for Dirty Yankee. Except I'm usually clean. Yeah, I was growing up. I'm in central Appalachia. Central Appalachia. So I'm not in what a lot of people would consider the southern United States. But when I was growing up, we called anybody cityfied, we called them Yankees. It didn't matter direction. We called them Northerners. Are there any other Appalachians out here who can identify with that? So if you're from a city, you're a Northerner to us. So it doesn't even matter. Like, you might be down in Orlando, which is way south of me. But to my people around here, you're a Northerner if you're in the city. Northerners, Yankees, they're kind of like interchangeable terms. Anyway, back to the cooking thing. That's when I come up with the idea. You can do one, or it can be one thing can be true, or the other thing can be true. They can't both be true at the same time. So, I had gotten this misconception from watching like Bear Grylls, watching these survival videos, that these guys are cooking these beautiful, elaborate meals next to gurgling creeks out in the middle of nowhere. Eggs, fresh vegetables, butter. It's interesting. Every time you see in one of these videos they pull out butter, the butter is not melted. It's a perfect block of butter. How does that happen? How does that happen out in the woods? It doesn't happen out in the woods. There's so many tells, and people just overlook it because as human beings, this is a human quality, is that we are prone, we are susceptible to pushing away all rational thought for what looks good. And I'm not saying that I'm better than everybody else. I do it too. But, one of the reasons I created Practical Woodsman is to cut through all that stuff, cut through the artificiality of all that stuff, and try to present the real stuff. Ron says he loves the fact that he's a hillbilly. I do too. Now, I went through a time I was in a professional field. I was a medical interpreter in the hospitals for Philadelphia and in New England, working alongside the world's most renowned surgeons and doctors. And in that environment, I really did my best to hide my accent, to speak proper English and stuff like that. And it was I can identify with my friend. I did not want people to know where I was from and stuff because I wanted them to view me as a professional. Now, life is a lot better because I don't try to put on airs or be what I'm not. So I'm with you, Ron. Nowadays I embrace my culture and my background. I love it. Love the most everything that goes with it. Caden says, I'm proud to be Southern. None of the BS they say about us is true. Caden, I was just talking to this buddy who visited today. I said they do these shows where they're like crying over Appalachia. Oh, we got to go rescue Appalachia. Oh, they're so depraved and so depressed and we need to go rescue them. And I was telling him, we don't need rescuing. Most of the people in my area so if you come from a city and you saw these people living, you'd say they're living in squalor. They're living in squalor. They're living in poverty. We need to rescue them. But what you're not understanding, if you're from the city, is all of the freedoms that they have that you don't have. They live on 100 acres of property that's been passed down to them through generations. You don't have that. They've got no bureaucrat telling them what they can and can't build or do on their property. They hunt deer year around and they are allowed to do it. They get their water out of the freshest sources, straight out of the ground, full of minerals. You don't get that in the city. So yes, they might be dealing with some poverty, but the trade-offs, we love the trade-offs. And so we don't need rescuing. When the Great Depression hit, do you know who suffered the least? Appalachian hillbillies. Why do you think that's true? Because they were already growing their own gardens. They were already self-sufficient. They already were getting their water out of a hole in the ground. They didn't need the government to come in and rescue them. They did very well during the Great Depression because they were already self-sufficient. So we don't need rescuing, and we don't need pity. In fact, I think a lot of the people from the city would do themselves a favor by learning our ways instead of trying to change our ways. It reminds me of like when the white men come in and tried to bring the American Indian up to date. Like, you're living wrong. You're living wrong. You're living like savages. You need to live like us. Well, there are trade-offs. The Indians can live like us, but in order to do that, they have to give up a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff. So it's just a trade-off. It's not like one is better than the other, in my opinion. Ryan Peters says, I swear the meals are pre-cooked and they just heat and eat. Ryan, I think you're probably onto something. In a lot of cases, I think you're onto what I believe. Now, of course, I can't say this dogmatically because they never turn the camera around. They never turn the camera around to show you where they're really at. Or, because I think if they did, you'd see a city right there. You would definitely see a house and a vehicle and like an icebox. They're definitely, when they take out these juicy steaks and it's like in the middle of July, they are definitely carrying a cooler. Definitely. There's no question about it. They're either carrying a cooler or they walked right out their back door down to the place where they're filming this stuff. So whatever the case is, they're not presenting the truth. Jihan says hunting year-round sounds awesome. My uncle did. I remember middle of the summer coming home, he'd have a deer hanging that he was skinning and gutting, hanging there middle of summer, not anywhere close to hunting season. But that's the law. If you own property, you're allowed to hunt on your property year round. It don't matter. If there's a deer on your property and you don't want that deer on there, you shoot the deer. Or if you want to hunt the deer, you hunt the deer. That's the law. So owning your own property, and in today's world, that means it's been passed down to you most. Even the few acres that I own, you know, I've told you guys I own a few mountain acres here in Appalachia. I didn't pay for that. My grandpa had hundreds of acres of wilderness that was passed down to him. Well, where did his parents get it from? It was passed down from their parents. So we're at this weird place in time where there are some of us who are blessed that we've had these things passed down to us. But if you're living in like Philadelphia or something and you just want to go out and buy 180 acres or 200 acres, man, that's going to cost a fortune. It's going to be very expensive. Mostly the wealthy can afford to do that, but normal people can't. So it's a changing world. It's a changing world we live in. I couldn't afford to go out and buy, 1,000 acres of pristine wilderness. I couldn't do it, but not without being filthy rich. And so I feel fortunate that I grew up on the hundreds of acres that I did that were within my family. That got passed down to my parents. My parents are getting older. It would not be surprising to me if it passes down to me. If it does, I'll tell you what, I'm going to turn it into like a sanctuary. I'm not going to allow anybody to go in there to tree it or anything like that. If it gets passed down to me, then I'm preserving it the way it is for as long as I live. But I wouldn't have the resources on my own to go and have access to that type of woods if it just hadn't been passed down through the generations to me. So, I'm very fortunate in that way. And you can hunt it year round. If it's your property, you can hunt it year round. That's the beauty of that. Oh, goodness. All right, we went a little bit over time, but it was a fun conversation, wasn't it? I think this is a really good live stream. So I'm going to let y'all go. I really appreciate y'all joining me, especially you folks on YouTube there. I'm glad I was able to hold your attention this time around. I think this is going to be a good one. It's going to go in the bank. This is Emerson. Emerson is the guy that I take with me when I go out into the backcountry. He's a blackmouth cur, a Ladner blackmouth cur, mixed with a Louisiana Catahoula leopard dog. And these are Bradbury dogs, as I call them, because they're the best dogs for my lifestyle that I've ever encountered. I was just telling this guy who was visiting me, as long as I have my dog with me and I'm in the back of the middle of the woods, I mean literally out in the middle of nowhere, just me and the dog, I don't worry about a thing. Not as long as I've got him with me. And what I was also telling him was that in the middle of the night, if I hear noises or something like that, they're like concerning noises, if he doesn't react, I go right back to sleep. I don't worry about it. Because I know that if it's anything to worry about, he'll be up taking care of it. And a dog is the very best piece of kit that any woodsman can have. And I truly believe that. Today we were talking about hatchets and stuff like that. Forget the hatchets and everything. Number one, most important piece of gear for the woodsman, in my opinion, is a good dog. A good dog will let you sleep the whole night through, no problems. And if there is something that's worrisome and he jumps up, he just takes care of it and he comes back. He runs the thing out. They can detect, they can hear, smell, and see what we can't even imagine. at a distance that we can't even imagine. So I know that when he jumps up to take care of something, that the thing is not even close enough for me to worry about it. He's already known that it's out there, but it's at a distance that I don't even have to worry about it. And when he jumps up and runs off, he will take care of that, meaning he will run that thing out of the area. And when he comes back crawling into the shelter, I'm already sleeping again. I don't have to worry about it. I think my dog has some kind of cur, DY says. He looks like Emerson, only brindle. Well, Emerson had a brindle brother. One of his brothers in the litter was brindle. And that come from the Catahoula leopard dog. Part of him. Well, one of these days I'm going to own my own kennel and be breeding my own dogs. They're going to be called Bradbury dogs. They're going to go for $2,000 a pup. Fully trained. So you'll just click on a button, say, I want one, Mr. Rutt, and I'll train the dog for you. I'll send him out to you. That's my dream. I have this dream of having my own breed of dog somewhere off in some alternate future. Kennel. Just have dogs coming out of my ears. I love dogs. All right, everybody. I appreciate you spending your Saturday afternoon with me. Go do something real fun. Go see the new Superman movie if you want to. It's pretty good. And I'll see you in the next episode of The Practical Woodsman. Y'all take care.